The skies above Velaran Prime burned with orange and red as enemy ships tore through the atmosphere. Ambassador Lyra Venthal stood at the window of her office, watching her world fall apart. The peaceful trading hub that had stood for 3 centuries was dying in a matter of hours. Explosions echoed across the capital city. The Valoran defense fleet, small and outdated, had lasted barely 2 hours against the Krell Dominion's assault forces. Now the enemy ships hung in orbit like dark predators, raining destruction on anything that moved. Lyra's hands shook as she activated the emergency communication system. Her people were traitors, not warriors. They had always relied on diplomacy and friendship to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Now those friendships would be tested. "This is Ambassador Lyra Venthal of Velaran Prime," she said into the transmitter, her voice steady despite her fear. "We are under attack by Krell forces. Our defenses have failed. We request immediate assistance from any allied species. Repeat. This is a distress call. We need help. R." The responses came quickly, but they brought no comfort. The Axthari sent their sympathies and promised medical supplies. The Torvan offered to accept refugees, but could send no military aid. The Pleiadians expressed concern and suggested a diplomatic solution. Every species had an excuse. Every species had reasons why they couldn't fight the Krell. On the other side of the planet, Captain Jake Morrison watched the carnage from his small liaison office. He was the only human stationed in the Valoran system, sent there 3 years ago to maintain relations between Earth and the Valorans. He had grown to love these gentle people and their beautiful world. Jake's communication console lit up with priority alerts. The Krell were broadcasting their victory across all channels. High Commander Zeph Crost appeared on every screen, his reptilian features twisted in what passed for a smile among his kind. "The Valoran system now belongs to the Krell Dominion," Crost announced. "Resistance is futile. Surrender, and you will be absorbed into our empire with minimal losses. Fight, and you will be eliminated." Jake slammed his fist on the desk. He had seen what Krell occupation meant: slavery, resource extraction, and the complete destruction of native culture. The Valorans didn't deserve this fate. He opened a direct channel to Earth Command, bypassing normal diplomatic procedures. This was an emergency, and protocol could go to hell. "This is Captain Jake Morrison, Human Liaison Officer, Valoran System," he said urgently. "The Valorans are under attack. Their defenses are gone. The Krell are landing ground forces. I'm requesting any assistance Earth can provide. These people helped us during the Proxima Plague. They saved thousands of human lives. We owe them. Find. Thanks for watching. And context manner. We owe them." Jake didn't know if anyone would listen. Earth was far from the Valoran system, and humanity had its own problems. But he had to try. Below his office, Velaran families fled through the streets, carrying whatever they could grab. Children cried. The elderly struggled to keep up. Krell dropships descended from the sky, deploying soldiers in black armor who began rounding up civilians. Ambassador Lyra had moved to the underground command center beneath the capital. Around her, Valoran military officers coordinated the evacuation. There wasn't much else they could do. "Ambassador, we're receiving responses from our allies," one officer reported, his voice hollow. "The Confederation sends relief supplies. The Union offers sanctuary to refugees. The Alliance suggests we negotiate terms of surrender." Lyra closed her eyes. She had expected this, but it still hurt. In galactic politics, everyone calculated the cost of helping versus the cost of staying neutral. Against the Krell Dominion, most species chose neutrality. "What about the humans?" she asked, remembering the young captain who had always been so friendly. "No response yet, Ambassador." Lyra nodded. The humans were good people, but they were also practical. Their territory was on the other side of known space. Why would they risk war with the Krell for one small system? Above the planet, High Commander Crost reviewed reports from his command ship. The invasion was proceeding perfectly. The Valoran fleet was destroyed. Ground forces controlled all major cities. Within a week, the system would be fully integrated into the Dominion. His communications officer approached. "Commander, we intercepted a transmission from the human liaison officer to Earth Command." Krost's eyes narrowed. "The humans? What did they say?" "A request for assistance, Commander." The human captain asked his superiors to send aid. Krost laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Aid? Let them send their aid. Food, medicine, perhaps a few counselors, to help the Valorans accept their new reality. The humans are merchants and explorers, not warriors. They pose no threat." His second-in-command seemed less certain. "Sir, intelligence reports suggest the human military is more capable than we assumed." "Capable of what?" Krost snapped. "They have never fought a major war. They have no territorial ambitions. They prefer trade agreements to conquest. I have 150 warships in this system. Even if the humans send a fleet, which they won't, they would send perhaps 20 ships at most. A token gesture to satisfy their conscience." The commander turned back to the view screen, watching Valoran Prime spin below. "No. The humans will do what all the other species have done. They will express sympathy, send some supplies, and quietly forget about their Valoran friends. It's the way of the galaxy." In her bunker, Lyra received another update. Krell forces now controlled the spaceports and communication arrays. The evacuation ships were being turned back or destroyed. Her people were trapped. "Ambassador, we have confirmation," an officer said quietly. "Earth Command received Captain Morrison's message." "And?" Lyra asked, though she already knew the answer. "No details yet. They acknowledged receipt and said they were reviewing the situation." Lyra felt the last bit of hope drain away. Reviewing the situation. That meant committees, debates, cost-benefit analysis. By the time Earth made a decision, if they made one at all, the Valoran system would be just another Krell colony. She thought about the human captain, Jake Morrison. He had attended her daughter's wedding. He had learned to speak Valoran. He had told her once that humans believed in loyalty above all else. She had wanted to believe him. Now, watching her world burn on the monitors, she realized that loyalty was a luxury only the strong could afford. And in this galaxy, against the might of the Krell Dominion, no one was strong enough to stand for the Valorans. Outside, the Krell ships continued their bombardment. Inside the bunker, the Valoran people waited for the end. And somewhere far away, across the vast darkness of space, Earth Command was reviewing the situation. The message from Captain Jake Morrison arrived at Earth Command headquarters during the night shift. A junior officer flagged it as priority and sent it up the chain. Within an hour, it reached the desk of Admiral Lisa Grant. Lisa had been in the military for 30 years. She had seen wars, peacekeeping missions, and disasters. She had learned to stay calm in any crisis. But when she read Jake's report, her jaw tightened. She immediately forwarded it to the Joint Chiefs and requested an emergency meeting. By dawn, the top military commanders of Earth sat around a conference table, reviewing the situation. "The Valorans are under attack," Lisa said, displaying images of the Krell assault on the main screen. "Their defenses collapsed in hours. The Krell are occupying their homeworld as we speak." General Frank Cooper, head of the Marine Corps, leaned forward. "How many Krell ships?" "Approximately 150 warships, plus support vessels and troop carriers," Lisa replied. "They've committed about a third of their total fleet to this invasion." "And the Valoran casualties?" asked someone. "Unknown, but estimates suggest thousands dead already, with more dying as the occupation continues." The room fell silent. Everyone present knew about the Valorans. 20 years ago, when a plague hit the human colony on Proxima 7, the Valorans had arrived with experimental medicine and medical teams. They had stayed for 6 months, working around the clock, refusing payment. They had saved over 15,000 human lives. Colonel Marcus Webb spoke up. We owe these people. They helped us when we needed it most. Agreed, Lisa said. But we need to discuss our options. I've prepared 3 scenarios. She brought up the first option on the screen. Option 1. Send a relief convoy with medical supplies, food, and refugee transport. Low risk, low cost, minimal effectiveness. Nobody looked impressed. Option 2. Dispatch a battle group. 40 to 50 ships. Show the Krell. We're serious. Provide some actual military support. Medium risk, medium cost, uncertain effectiveness against their numbers. A few nods around the table, but Lisa could see they weren't satisfied. Option 3, she said, and paused. Full fleet mobilization. We send everything we have. The room erupted. Officers spoke over each other, voices rising. That's insane! We're talking about risking our entire military for one system. The Krell will see it as a declaration of war. Lisa let them argue for a moment, then raised her hand for silence. I know it sounds extreme, but consider this. If we send a small force and it fails, we look weak. If we send nothing, we abandon our allies, and every species in the galaxy learns that human friendship means nothing. But if we send everything, we send a message that cannot be misunderstood. What message? General Cooper asked. That humanity protects its friends. That when you help us, we remember. That attacking our allies means facing the full might of Earth. Odernon. Before anyone could respond, the door opened. President Daniel Hayes entered the room. Everyone stood. Sit, the president said. He looked tired but determined. I've been briefed on the situation. Admiral Grant, present your options again. Lisa went through all 3 scenarios. The president listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. 20 years ago, I was a doctor on Proxima 7, he said finally. I watched Valoran medical teams work 30-hour shifts to save our people. I watched them cry when patients died, even though those patients were aliens to them. I held the hand of a Valoran nurse who died from the plague she caught while treating our sick. He looked around the room. We are not a species that forgets our debts. We are not a species that calculates the minimum response when our friends are dying. Option 3. Mobilize the fleet. The room exploded again, but the president's voice cut through the noise. I understand the risks. I understand the costs. But I also understand what it means to be human. We pay our debts, and we protect our friends. Admiral Grant, you have 48 hours to assemble the fleet. Lisa stood and saluted. Yes, sir. Within minutes, orders went out to every human military installation in known space. Carriers recalled their crews from shore leave. Battlecruisers suspended maintenance operations. Destroyers broke off from patrol routes. Support ships loaded supplies at maximum speed. The mobilization was unprecedented. Nothing like it had happened since the Unification Wars 50 years ago, when Earth's nations had fought together against colonial separatists. At the Mars shipyards, 6 carrier groups prepared for deployment. Each carrier held hundreds of fighters and bombers, along with support craft. The flagship, UES Valiant, underwent final weapons checks. Admiral Lisa Grant transferred her command to the Valiant. As she walked through the corridors, she saw crew members preparing for battle. Young faces, nervous, but determined. They all knew what they were heading into. Captain Jake Morrison received new orders: stay in the Valoran system, maintain contact with the Resistance, and prepare for fleet arrival. He couldn't believe the response. 300 ships. Earth was sending 300 ships. He immediately tried to contact Ambassador Lyra, but Krell jamming blocked most communications. He sent encrypted messages through underground channels, hoping they would reach her. Around the galaxy, other species watched in disbelief. Intelligence services intercepted human military transmissions. Analysts tried to understand what was happening. The Xthari ambassador to Earth requested an emergency meeting. President Hayes, we've detected massive fleet movements. Are you really sending your entire military to the Valoran system? Yes, the president replied simply. But why? It's one system. The cost, the risk. It's not logical. The president smiled coldly. Perhaps logic isn't everything, Ambassador. Perhaps some things matter more than calculations. The Torven High Council sent a warning. Human aggression against the Krell Dominion could destabilize the entire sector. Earth's response was brief. We're not the aggressors. We're defending our friends. On the Krell homeworld, intelligence officers rushed to inform their leadership. High Command initially dismissed the reports as errors. No species would commit their entire fleet to rescue another. It was madness. But as confirmation came from multiple sources, the Krell leadership began to worry. They sent urgent messages to War Master Drax, commanding the occupation forces in the Valoran system. Drax received the warnings with contempt. So the humans are sending ships. Good. We'll destroy them and teach them not to interfere in Krell affairs. He ordered 30 warships to the edge of the Valoran system to intercept the human fleet. It would be more than enough, he thought. The humans were shopkeepers playing at war. Back on Earth, the fleet assembled at Rally Point Sigma, just outside the solar system. 317 ships in total. 6 carrier groups, 15 battlecruisers, 50 destroyers, dozens of frigates, corvettes, and support vessels. Admiral Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the tactical display. Every ship reported ready. Every crew member knew what they were fighting for. All ships, she broadcast on the fleet channel. 20 years ago, the Valorans saved 15,000 human lives. Today, we repay that debt. Today, we show the galaxy what human loyalty means. Prepare for jump to faster-than-light travel. Destination: Valoran Prime. The fleet acknowledged. 317 ships aligned their jump drives. Execute jump, Lisa commanded. Space rippled and tore as the largest human military force ever assembled vanished from Earth's solar system, heading toward a small trading world on the edge of known space, where peaceful people waited to die, and ruthless conquerors celebrated their easy victory. In 48 hours, the Krell would learn that humans don't do anything halfway. 3 days after the invasion began, High Commander Zeph Crost stood in what used to be the Valoran Council chamber. Krell soldiers had stripped the elegant room of its artwork and replaced it with military equipment. Victory banners hung where peace treaties once decorated the walls. Crost looked out over the occupied capital city. Smoke still rose from several districts. Krell patrols marched through streets where Valoran civilians hurried past with their heads down. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The resource extraction facilities are operational, his second-in-command reported. We've identified mineral deposits worth 10 times our initial estimates. This conquest will pay for itself within a year. Excellent, Crost said. And the resistance? Minor. Small groups conducting hit and run attacks. Nothing we can't handle. We've rounded up their leaders. Or most of them. The population is broken. Crost nodded with satisfaction. The Valorans had been even easier to conquer than expected. Their allies had done exactly what he predicted. Expressed sympathy, and did nothing. The galaxy operated on cold calculation, and helping the Valorans made no financial or strategic sense. In the underground tunnels beneath the city, Ambassador Lyra Venthal huddled with what remained of her government. They had been in hiding for 3 days, moving from shelter to shelter, staying ahead of Krell patrols. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez crouched beside her. The human intelligence officer had been embedded with the Valoran diplomatic corps for 18 months. When the attack came, she had refused evacuation and joined the resistance. We hit another supply depot last night, Amy reported quietly. Destroyed 3 transport vehicles and stole weapons. The Krell are getting angry. Lyra felt no satisfaction from the small victory. It won't matter. They have too many soldiers, too many ships. We can annoy them, but we can't win. Amy's expression remained neutral. She had received encrypted orders from Earth Command 2 days ago, but those orders forbade her from revealing specific details. All she could say was that help was coming. "Don't give up hope, Ambassador," Amy said. "Things might change soon." Lyra wanted to believe her, but hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. The other species had made their positions clear. The Valorans were alone. Above the planet, War Master Drax commanded the Krell occupation fleet from his flagship. He was a veteran of 20 campaigns and had never lost a battle. This operation was almost boring in its simplicity. His communications officer approached. "War Master, we've intercepted additional human transmissions. Our intelligence suggests they may be deploying ships to this system." "Our War Master." Drax barely looked up from his tactical display. "How many ships?" Unclear, sir. The transmissions are encrypted, but based on power signatures and communication patterns. Possibly a small fleet. Define small. 20 ships, perhaps 30 at most." Drax laughed. "The humans are sending a token force to make themselves feel better." "Very well. Assign a patrol group to intercept them. 30 of our ships should be sufficient to destroy whatever the humans send." "Yes, War Master." Drax returned to planning resource extraction routes. The human fleet was barely worth his attention. Down in the resistance tunnels, Amy Rodriguez gathered intelligence from her network. She had made contact with Valoran fighters across the planet, coordinating attacks on Krell positions. The enemy was powerful, but they were also overconfident. A young Valoran fighter named Keth approached her. "Lieutenant, we intercepted a Krell transmission. They're talking about human ships." Amy's expression didn't change. "What did they say?" "They're sending 30 ships to the system's edge. They think the humans are coming." Amy allowed herself a small smile. 30 ships? That's interesting. "Will the humans really come?" Keth asked. "Our allies abandoned us. Why would Earth be different?" Amy thought about her orders, about the massive mobilization happening across human space. On the Krell command ship, High Commander Crost hosted a victory celebration. Officers from across the occupation force gathered to toast their conquest. Music played, though it sounded harsh to Valoran ears. The Krell drank their traditional victory wine and made speeches about the glory of the Dominion. "To easy victories," Crost said, raising his glass. "The Valorans have proven that pacifist species make the best targets. Their allies proved that galactic powers care only for themselves. And soon, the humans will prove that even their legendary stubbornness has limits." The officers cheered. They had all heard stories about humans, about their unusual tendency toward loyalty and emotion. But stories meant nothing against military reality. The Krell had 150 warships in the system. What could a small human relief force do? At the edge of the Valoran system, the Krell patrol group took position. 30 warships spread out in an interception pattern. Their commander, a young officer named Vex, felt excited. This was his first chance to fight the famous humans. "All ships, maintain formation," he ordered. "When the human fleet arrives, we destroy it immediately. Show no mercy. The Dominion does not tolerate interference." His sensor officer monitored the detection grid. "Commander, we should see them soon. Human faster-than-light drives create a distinctive energy signature. Good. I want them to see us waiting. I want them to know they made a mistake coming here." Back on Valoran Prime, the occupation continued. Krell engineers dismantled Valoran factories and shipped the equipment to Dominion worlds. Krell administrators cataloged the population for labor assignments. Krell soldiers enforced strict curfews and harsh punishments for resistance. Ambassador Lyra watched through hidden cameras as her people suffered. Children were separated from parents. The elderly were pushed aside. The Valoran way of life was being systematically erased. Lieutenant Amy sat beside her, monitoring encrypted communications. Earth Command had sent one final message. Fleet. Arriving in 6 hours. Maintain resistance. Help is coming. 6 hours. Amy checked her weapon and prepared for what she knew would be a crucial moment. The Krell had no idea what was about to hit them. In his command chamber, High Commander Crost reviewed reports. Everything was perfect. The occupation was ahead of schedule. Resources flowed to the Dominion. The local population was subdued, and at the system's edge, his patrol group waited to swat down the pathetic human relief force. He thought about the human captain who had called for help. Jake Morrison. Crost had read the intercepted transmission several times. The human had sounded so desperate, so emotional, typical of their species. They let feelings cloud their judgment. Commander, an aide interrupted his thoughts. War Master Drax reports, the patrol group is in position. They expect the human fleet within hours. Excellent. Record the battle. I want footage of the human ships being destroyed. It will serve as a warning to other species who might consider interfering with Krell operations. The aide saluted and left. Crost returned to the window, looking out at his conquered city. He had fought many battles, conquered many worlds. This was just one more victory in a long career. Below in the tunnels, Velaran resistance fighters prepared for a coordinated uprising. Amy had passed the word. When the human fleet arrived, they would strike at key Krell positions. It was a desperate plan. But desperation was all they had left. Lyra joined the fighters in prayer, following the ancient Valoran tradition before battle. They had always been a peaceful people, but even the peaceful could learn to fight when their homes were burning. 6 hours, Amy repeated, checking her chronometer. Be ready. At the edge of the system, Commander Vex waited with his 30 ships. He imagined the glory of destroying the human fleet. He imagined returning to the homeworld as the officer who taught Earth a lesson about Krell power. His sensor officer suddenly looked up. Commander, I'm detecting something. The human fleet? Yes, sir. They're dropping out of faster-than-light travel now. Vex smiled. All ships, prepare to engage. Target their lead vessels. We'll show these humans what happens when they challenge the Krell Dominion. But then, the sensor officer's face went pale. Commander, you need to see this. The main display activated, showing the sensor readings from the edge of the system. And there, dropping out of faster-than-light travel, wasn't a small relief force or a token gesture of support. It was 317 ships in perfect battle formation, stretching across space like an armored wall. Their weapons hot and their intent unmistakable. Commander Vex stared at his sensor display in disbelief. The numbers couldn't be right. His systems had to be malfunctioning. Run diagnostics, he ordered, his voice tight. These readings are impossible. Diagnostics complete, Commander, his sensor officer replied, voice shaking. 317 human vessels, ranging from corvettes to carriers. They're all transmitting active weapon signatures. Vex felt ice in his veins. His patrol group of 30 ships suddenly seemed pathetically small. He had expected to face 20 human ships at most. This was a full invasion force. Contact War Master Drax immediately, he said. And pull our ships back to defensive positions around the planet. On the bridge of the UES Valiant, Admiral Lisa Grant watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The entire human fleet had arrived in perfect formation. Every ship reported ready for combat. Every crew member was at battle stations. Admiral, we're being scanned by Krell vessels, her tactical officer reported. 30 ships at the system's edge. They're pulling back. Let them run, Lisa said. Open a channel on all frequencies. I want everyone in this system to hear what I have to say. The communication officer worked his console. Channel open. Admiral. Broadcasting on all frequencies. Lisa took a breath and spoke clearly. This is Admiral Lisa Grant of the United Earth Forces. The Valoran people are under our protection. Krell forces have 1 hour to withdraw from this system or be removed by force. This is your only warning. Tennedy. On Valoran Prime, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez heard the broadcast through her encrypted receiver. She smiled and turned to Ambassador Lyra. Did you hear that? Amy asked. Lyra's eyes were wide. 300 ships? The humans sent 300 ships? I told you help was coming, Amy said. Earth doesn't do things halfway. In the Krell Command Center, War Master Drax listened to the human transmission with growing anger. Who did these humans think they were? The Krell Dominion had claimed this system. It belonged to them now. He pulled up his tactical display. The human fleet was massive. Yes. But he had 150 warships plus orbital defenses. The humans might have numbers, but the Krell had position and fortifications. Send a response, Drax ordered. The Krell Dominion does not surrender. This system is ours by right of conquest. If the humans want it, they can try to take it. High Commander Crost rushed into the command center. Are those sensor readings accurate? Yes, Commander, Drax confirmed. The humans sent their entire fleet. Crost couldn't believe it. Everything he knew about galactic politics said this shouldn't happen. Species didn't risk their entire military for one system. It was irrational, emotional, wasteful. Why would they do this? He muttered. It doesn't matter, Drax said. We have a strong defensive position. Our ships are dug in around the planet. Our weapons platforms are active. Let them come. We'll bleed them dry. On the Valiant, Admiral Lisa received the Krell response. She had expected nothing less. Warriors like the Krell never backed down from a challenge. Tactical, what's our situation? She asked. Her tactical officer brought up a detailed analysis. The Krell fleet is concentrated around Valoran Prime. They've got good orbital positions and several weapons platforms. If we go straight in, we'll take heavy casualties. What do you recommend? Hit them on multiple vectors. Use our fighters to take out their platforms. Battle cruisers engage their capital ships. Destroyers protect the carriers. Destroyers, Lisa nodded. Captain Morrison, are you receiving this? Jake Morrison's voice came through from his position on the planet. Reading you loud and clear. Admiral, the Resistance is ready to support your attack. Good. When we engage the Krell fleet, you hit their ground positions. Create chaos. Make them fight on two fronts. Understood, Admiral. Good hunting. Lisa turned to her crew. All ships, this is Admiral Grant. The Krell have refused to withdraw. We're going in. Remember why we're here. Remember who we're fighting for. The Valorans saved our people. Today, we return the favor. The fleet acknowledged. 317 ships began moving toward Valoran Prime. In coordinated groups, Commander Kyle Bennett sat in the cockpit of his fighter, one of 600 pilots preparing to launch from the carriers. He had joined the military to explore space, not to fight wars, but when he heard about the Valoran situation, he had volunteered immediately. All wings, launch on my mark, came the order from flight control. 3, 2, 1, launch. Kyle's fighter shot from the carrier bay into space. Around him, hundreds of other fighters formed up in attack squadrons. They accelerated ahead of the main fleet, screening for threats. Enemy weapons platforms detected, his targeting system announced. Designating targets. Kyle locked onto a Krell platform hanging in orbit. Wolf Squadron, follow my lead. We take out these platforms before the big ships arrive. His squadron dove toward the enemy position. Krell point defense weapons opened fire, filling space with plasma bolts. Kyle weaved through the defensive fire, his hands steady on the controls. Locked, he said, and fired. His missiles streaked toward the platform, slamming into its shields. Other fighters added their fire, and the platform's shields collapsed. A final volley destroyed it in a burst of flame. One down, Kyle reported, moving to next target. The battle for Valoran Prime had begun. War Master Drax watched his tactical display as human fighters swarmed his defensive positions. The enemy pilots were good, better than he had expected. His platforms were falling one by one. "Deploy our fighters," he ordered. "Drive them back." Krell fighters launched from their carriers, engaging the humans. Space filled with dogfights as pilots from both sides fought for superiority. But the human fighters had support. As Krell ships moved to engage them, human destroyers appeared, their railguns firing with deadly precision. Krell shields flared and failed under the kinetic bombardment. "War Master, we're taking heavy losses," an officer reported. "The human weapons are more effective than our intelligence suggested." Drax's jaw clenched. "All ships, concentrate fire on their carriers. If we destroy their launch platforms, we stop their fighters." Krell battlecruisers turned their massive weapons toward the human carriers. But those carriers were protected by screens of destroyers and frigates. Every shot the Krell fired was met with withering return fire. Admiral Lisa watched the battle unfold with practiced calm. Her fleet was performing exactly as planned. The Krell were strong, but they were fighting a defensive battle. They had to protect the planet. The humans could choose their engagements. "Battlecruiser Group Alpha, engage enemy capital ships," she ordered. "Destroyer Group Beta, suppress their orbital weapons. Carrier Group, maintain fighter operations." The human battlecruisers were monsters of war, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. They moved into range of the Krell capital ships and opened fire. Space erupted with energy beams, missiles, and railgun rounds. Shields flared on both sides. Ships took damage, and some began to fall. But the humans kept coming. For every ship that was damaged, 2 more took its place. The Krell were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. On the planet below, Jake Morrison gathered the Valoran resistance. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez stood beside him, checking her weapons. "The fleet's engaging the Krell in orbit," Jake said. "It's time. Hit their command centers, their supply depots, their communication arrays. Make them panic." The resistance fighters, armed with stolen Krell weapons and human equipment Amy had hidden, moved out through the tunnels. They emerged in carefully planned locations across the capital city. Explosions rocked Krell positions. Supply convoys were ambushed. Officers were targeted by snipers. The occupation force suddenly found themselves fighting on 2 fronts. High Commander Crost watched his perfect occupation fall apart. Above, his fleet was being torn to pieces. Below, his ground forces were under attack from every direction. "This is impossible," he said. "They're just humans. They're traitors, explorers, diplomats." War Master Drax, his face grim, replied, "They're also warriors. We underestimated them." In orbit, Commander Kyle Bennett's fighter squadron had cleared the weapons platforms. Now they turned their attention to Krell supply ships, destroying the vessels that kept the occupation force fed and armed. "This is for the Valorans," Kyle said as his missiles found another target. Admiral Lisa Grant stood on her bridge, watching the Krell fleet break apart. In 3 hours of combat, the enemy had lost over half their ships. The rest were trying to retreat, but human destroyers blocked their escape routes. "Open a channel to the Krell commander," Lisa ordered. War Master Drax's face appeared on the screen. "War Master, your fleet is destroyed," Lisa said calmly. "Your ground forces are cut off. Surrender now, and we'll accept your troops as prisoners of war. Continue fighting, and we'll destroy every ship you have." Drax looked at his tactical display. She was right. He had lost. "The Krell Dominion does not surrender," he said, but there was no strength in his voice. "Then the Krell Dominion will die here," Lisa replied. She closed the channel and turned to her crew. "Prepare for final assault. If they won't surrender, we end this." "War Master." Drax stared at his tactical display. In the 10 minutes Admiral Grant had given him, he watched 3 more of his ships explode. The human fleet surrounded his position. There was no escape, no reinforcement, no hope. He thought about the Krell Code of Honor. A warrior fought until death. Surrender was disgrace. But he also thought about the 3,000 soldiers under his command, the crew members on his ships, the officers who trusted him. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he said quietly. His second-in-command looked shocked. "War Master? Open the channel," Drax repeated. Admiral Lisa Grant's face appeared on his screen again. She waited, saying nothing. "The Krell forces in the Velaran system surrender," Drax said, each word heavy. "We will power down our weapons and accept your terms." Lisa nodded. "Smart choice. Order all your ships to move to the designated coordinates. Ground forces will lay down their arms and assemble at collection points. Any resistance will be met with force." Drax transmitted the surrender order. Across the system, Krell ships went dark. On the planet below, occupation soldiers emerged from their positions, with hands raised. High Commander Crost watched from his command center as his perfect conquest collapsed. He had been so confident, so certain. Now Krell soldiers were surrendering to humans and Valoran resistance fighters. He tried to reach his personal shuttle, thinking he could escape. But Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez and a team of Velaran fighters were waiting. "Going somewhere, Commander?" Amy asked, her weapon pointed at him. Crost reached for his sidearm, but a Valoran fighter was faster. The shot hit his arm, and he fell. Within moments, he was surrounded. "You've made a mistake," Crost said through his pain. "The Dominion will send more ships. You cannot protect this system forever." Amy smiled. "The fleet that just destroyed your forces would disagree." On the streets of the capital, Velaran civilians emerged from hiding. They watched in amazement as Krell soldiers were marched to collection points, disarmed and defeated. Children who had hidden for days came out to see their liberators. Ambassador Lyra Venthal stood in the central plaza as the first human Marines landed. Colonel Marcus Webb led his troops off the transport, and Lyra rushed forward. "Colonel Webb," she said, her voice breaking. "You came. You actually came." Marcus smiled. "No, just tired. So very tired. It's over now. The Krell are surrendering. Your world is free." Lyra looked around at her damaged city. Buildings were destroyed. Streets were scarred. But her people were alive. They were free, and standing beside them were human soldiers who had crossed the galaxy to help. Captain Jake Morrison found Lyra an hour later. She was coordinating relief efforts with human medical teams. "Ambassador," he said. She turned and saw him. Without a word, she hugged him. Jake, surprised, hugged her back. "I'm sorry I doubted you," she said. "I thought Earth would send supplies. Maybe a few ships. I never imagined this." "We remember our friends," Jake said simply. "You saved our people, we saved yours. That's how it works." In orbit, Admiral Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the cleanup operations. Damaged Krell ships were being towed to holding positions. Human engineering teams were already repairing Valoran orbital facilities. "Admiral, message from Earth Command," her communication officer reported. President Hayes appeared on the screen. "Admiral Grant, congratulations. Casualties?" "Light, sir. We lost 4 ships, with another dozen damaged. Personnel casualties are under 500. The Krell lost over 90 ships and surrendered the rest." "And the Valorans?" "Celebrating their liberation, sir. Ground forces report widespread gratitude. We're distributing supplies and beginning reconstruction efforts." The president nodded. "Well done, Admiral. You've sent a message to the galaxy that won't be forgotten." As the days passed, the full extent of Earth's response became clear to the galactic community. Intelligence services from every major species analyzed the battle. Military theorists studied the tactics. Diplomatic corps scrambled to understand the implications. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Krell Dominion filed a formal complaint, claiming human aggression and demanding compensation. The human ambassador, an older woman named Catherine Ross, listened to the Krell diplomat's accusations with barely concealed contempt. "You invaded a peaceful species," Catherine said when he finished. "You destroyed their fleet, occupied their world, and began enslaving their population. And you have the audacity to claim we were the aggressors?" The Krell diplomat sputtered. "The Valorans were a legitimate target. The system had resources we needed. That is how the galaxy works." Catherine stood. "No. That's how you work. The Krell Dominion believes might makes right. That the strong can take what they want. But humanity believes something different. We believe in loyalty. We believe in friendship. And we believe that when someone helps us in our darkest hour, we remember." She looked around at the other delegates. 20 years ago, when plague threatened to wipe out our colony on Proxima 7, the Valorans sent aid. Not a token gesture. Not the minimum required. They sent everything they could. Medical teams stayed for 6 months. They refused payment. They worked until they collapsed from exhaustion. And when the plague mutated and became contagious to them, several Valorans died saving human lives. The chamber was silent. So when the Krell attacked the Valorans, when they sent their distress call, there was never any question what Earth would do. We mobilized our entire fleet. We crossed the galaxy. We fought a superior defensive position and won, because that's what friends do. The council voted on the Krell complaint. The result was overwhelming. The complaint was dismissed. Furthermore, the council ruled that the Krell Dominion would pay reparations to the Valoran people for damages caused during the occupation. The Krell ambassador left in fury, but he also left knowing that the galaxy had changed. On Valoran Prime, reconstruction continued. Human engineers worked alongside Valoran workers to rebuild damaged structures. Human medical teams treated the wounded. Human supply ships brought food, medicine, and materials. But the most significant change was military. Admiral Lisa Grant established a permanent defensive station in the Valoran system, staffed by rotating human battle groups. The message was clear: attack the Valorans, and you attack Earth. 3 months after liberation, Ambassador Lyra stood before a crowd of 50,000 Valorans and their human protectors. The central plaza had been rebuilt, and a new monument stood at its center. The monument showed a human hand and a Valoran hand clasped in friendship. Engraved at the base were simple words: "They sent a fleet." Lyra spoke to the crowd, her voice amplified across the city. "We called for help, and our friends answered. Not with words or token gestures, but with everything they had." The humans teach us that true friendship isn't measured by convenience. It's measured by sacrifice, by commitment, by standing together when darkness comes. She looked at Admiral Lisa Grant, Colonel Marcus Webb, Captain Jake Morrison, and Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, all standing nearby. "We will never forget what you did for us," Lyra continued. "And we pledge that if ever humanity needs us, we will answer their call with everything we have. That is the debt we owe. That is the friendship we cherish." The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans and Valorans embraced. Music played. Celebration filled the streets. That night, Admiral Lisa Grant stood on the observation deck of the station, looking down at Valoran Prime. Captain Jake Morrison joined her. "Do you think we overreacted?" Jake asked. 300 ships for one system. Some people back home are saying it was too much." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "You know what the problem is with the galaxy? Everyone calculates. Everyone asks, what's the minimum I can do and still look good? Everyone weighs cost against benefit." She turned to face him. "But that's not who we are. When someone helps us, we don't calculate the minimum response. We don't ask what's convenient. We ask what's right. And what's right is standing by your friends, no matter the cost." Jake smiled. The Krell learned that the hard way. They did. And so did everyone else watching. Word is spreading. Species that were on the fence about forming alliances with Earth are reconsidering. They're realizing that humans are different, that we actually mean what we say. Below them, lights from the rebuilt cities sparkled across the planet. Ships from a dozen species orbited peacefully, bringing trade and friendship. You know what I heard today? Jake said. On the other side of the galaxy, two species are negotiating an alliance, and one of them said to the other, "If we do this, we do it the human way. All in. No calculations. No backing out when things get tough." Lisa laughed. The human way. I like that. Me too, Jake said. Me too. Years later, historians would point to the Valoran crisis as a turning point in galactic politics. The moment when species learned that humanity operated by different rules, that humans valued loyalty over logic, friendship over profit, and honor over convenience. The phrase, "they sent a fleet," became common across the galaxy. It meant going beyond expectations. It meant commitment without calculation. It meant being there for your friends when it mattered most. And in the Valoran system, where human ships stood eternal watch, the people never forgot the day. 317 vessels appeared in their darkest hour, carrying not supplies or sympathy, but the full might of a species that refused to abandon its friends. Admiral Lisa Grant retired 5 years later, decorated as one of Earth's greatest military heroes. At her ceremony, President Hayes said, "You showed the galaxy who we are, not through speeches or treaties, but through action." Lisa's response was simple. "I just did what any human would do. I protected my friends." And across the stars, in 1,000 different languages, people told the story of the humans who thought sending 300 ships to save one system wasn't too much. It was exactly right.